The AFC North is one of the most competitive and hard-fought divisions in all of football. It's got two of the top four quarterbacks in the league in Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. It has top wide receivers in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It has running backs who are going to run through you in Derrick Henry. And of course, it has the elite defenses, led by Myles Garrett for the Browns and TJ Watt for the Steelers. So I'll be previewing these four AFC North teams ahead of the 2025 season by first going over their under-over win total for the season and then giving reasons why they'll go above that and reasons why they might go below that, as well as saying ultimately if I think they will have more or less wins than predicted. I'll be going over this division in reverse order, so I'll start with the team who I think is going to finish last in the division and end with the team who I think is going to finish first. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe right now for more NFL offseason content. I'll be doing all 8 divisions, so you don't want to miss any of those. Leave a like, leave a comment, and let's get into it. Unsurprisingly, the Cleveland Browns are my last place finisher in the AFC North. And Browns fans, God knows you've been here before. I certainly have with my fandom of Baker Mayfield. It is brutal, but if we're being honest with ourselves, I don't think anyone else is in danger of finishing last in the AFC North instead of the Browns, frankly. It's not really close looking at the over-under win totals either of these teams. Currently, the Browns have the lowest over-under win total in the NFL at 4.5 wins as of recording this in mid-June. Now, why is their over-under win total the lowest? Well, I think there's multiple reasons for this, and those are going to be my reasons for concern for this team, why I think they might go under that rather low 4.5 win total. The first one is the quarterback situation. One of the bigger storylines from the draft when they drafted Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, while also having Joe Flacco and trading for Kenny Pickett. So they now have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. The Browns are reportedly looking to maybe keep all 4 on the roster throughout the regular season. Realistically, though, that's just trying to drum up some more value if they're going to trade one of those guys, which presumably they have to, because the ultimate irony is, despite having 4 quarterbacks, they don't really have one. They don't have a guy. And really, that's kind of the problem with the Browns quarterback room, and has been the problem with the Browns quarterback room for as long as I can remember. And there's that guy with the Browns t-shirt who's got the million names on the back of his jersey. It's kind of part of Browns lore to never really have a stable, good quarterback. They have, obviously, Joe Flacco, the veteran, Dylan Gabriel, who they drafted in the 3rd round, their first rookie quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, who they drafted in the 5th round, their second rookie quarterback, and Kenny Pickett, who they traded for. And the way I see it with those 4 quarterbacks is there isn't a guy there. They don't have one guy that they can repeatedly rely on throughout the season, I don't think. There's lots of fringe starting quarterbacks / kind of high-level backups there. I think all 4 of those guys kind of fit that bill, frankly. But none of those guys really offer much more than that. Some guys have higher ceilings, some guys have higher floors, like someone like Joe Flacco, for example, with a higher floor. But it's a very uninspiring quarterback room, if we're being honest with ourselves. Personally, I think Dylan Gabriel will win the starting job, and then I think they'll keep a backup of Joe Flacco, I reckon, or Kenny Pickett, one of those two, depending on who looks better at camp. I think Joe Flacco would give you, as I said, a higher floor, but they did trade for Kenny Pickett, so maybe that will kind of keep him in the building. And I think they'll keep Shedeur Sanders on as the emergency 3rd quarterback, and one of the 4 will be traded away ultimately. But either way you cut it, I don't think that either of those quarterbacks, any 3 of them, any 4 of them, depending how many they keep, are going to be good enough to drag a not great Browns franchise, frankly, a bad Browns franchise, to any better than that 4.5 win total, right? The best quarterbacks can drag a bad team to 1, 2, maybe 3 extra wins. None of those guys can, I don't think. The second problem this team has is the head coach issue. Now, the head coach is Kevin Stefanski. He has been a 2-time Coach of the Year winner in 2020 and 2023. And I think he has the potential to be a great head coach. As I said, won Coach of the Year twice. But he's not exactly turned it around in Cleveland. It kind of more feels like he's treading water. And when they have a good season, that must mean that Kevin Stefanski's done amazingly and he deserves Coach of the Year as a result. So despite the personal accolades, I feel like as a coach to the team, he's obviously had them, with Joe Flacco when they had the amazing success in 2023. But again, it's not sustained success. The Browns don't not feel like the Browns, despite Stefanski winning Coach of the Year twice, and you think that he would turn that franchise around. I don't think he has. Now, while those 2 reasons are my causes for concern, I think ultimately my biggest cause for concern is the fact that those 2 problems, the quarterbacks and the head coach, are symptoms of a wider issue, right? A root cause. And for me, that is ownership and culture. I think the Browns, as I've said multiple times already, can't seem to stop being the Browns. The quarterback situation and the head coach questions aren't happening in a vacuum. They're happening because the Browns and Browns ownership and Browns, ultimate leadership is terrible, frankly. And it's something that I didn't really buy into as a fan before. I thought it was kind of just a useless talking point. But I do think it's very valid with the Browns. And the flip side is very valid with teams, say, like the Eagles or even like the Patriots under Bill Belichick back in the day. Like, good teams find a way to stay good and bad teams find a way to stay bad. And it seems like every year the Browns have a new excuse as to why they are bad, right? Ownership is responsible for the worst trade and the worst contract in NFL history with Deshaun Watson. They have dictated to Kevin Stefanski who the quarterback has to be for that team. My understanding was that he didn't necessarily want Deshaun Watson. So they paired their head coach with the quarterback he didn't like. That worked out brilliantly, as we well know. And ultimately, it's hard for the Browns to get talent in because who wants to be a free agent and go to Cleveland? So really, it's just been a self-compounding issue, a vicious cycle of just like badness resulting in badness, resulting in more badness. And the ownership, I think, are the rot at the core of this organization, which really impacts the daily running of the team. And it's very difficult then to kind of move on to optimism when I'm worried about the Browns as a core organization, right? I'm worried about the quarterback situation. I think they got talent on defense, which I'll talk about in a second. It's not really, though, a problem with the roster as much as it is just a problem deeper than that. So look, if the Browns can overcome it, we'll see. And that will lead us nicely to our reasons for optimism. And I do think, having said that about Stefanski, I do think he has the potential to be a good head coach. I like him as an offensive head coach. He's in that Shanahan tree. I think Dylan Gabriel also, despite not having maybe the highest of ceilings, I think he could have that potential to be that kind of LA Jared Goff-esque kind of quarterback, that point and shoot quarterback, have the coach in the ear the whole time, just kind of tell him where to go with the football, basically. Can he be an extension of the coach, really? Coaches often say, like, I wouldn't make for a good quarterback. I can't do the on-field stuff. But if you have a really good relationship with your quarterback, then you can do some great things. And that's what actually Jared Goff himself has spoken about before with Sean McVay, for example. And I think there's a very watered down version of that. You've got to really squint your eyes and take a long step back. But I think there's potential, at least, for that to be the case in Cleveland this year. And I also think that, given decent quarterback play and given a good kind of stable head coach potentially, that will put the defense, which really is the strong part of this team, in a much better position to succeed. They won't have to always be on the field. They don't have to always play from behind. They can pin their heads back and get after the quarterback maybe. And I think really that if you're just given a baseline of not terrible offense, even something as low as that, just consistently okay, I think the defense has then the potential to take over and win some games for this team. And really the defense could be the unit that pulls the team above the 4.5 win total by, maybe snatching a sack in the dying seconds of the game, maybe by having a turnover and a pick six. And really the defensive talent should be allowed to shine wherever possible, right? Obviously led by Myles Garrett, in my opinion, the best defensive player in the NFL right now. The rookie Mason Graham from Michigan, who I think is going to be terrorizing offensive linemen up the middle. They've also got Carson Schweschinger, the linebacker I loved from UCLA, to replace Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who unfortunately has to take a step back from football, but I love that replacement there. Greg Newsome is obviously brilliant. Denzel Ward is obviously elite as a cornerback as well, doesn't get the flowers he deserves. So do I think then that the Browns will go over their 4 or under their 4.5 win total? And the problem is, as I said at the top of the whole video, it's a really strong division. You've got to play the Steelers, Bengals, and Ravens twice. I do not think the Browns are anywhere close to being better than even the Steelers, let alone the Bengals and the Ravens. And they have a really tricky schedule. I think they're playing the NFC North. They're playing the Packers, the Bears, who are much improved, the Vikings, who yet have JJ McCarthy, but are still a better overall team, I would say. And then they've also got to play the Lions, Bills, and 49ers. So that's a really, really hard schedule. I struggle to see where the wins are going to come from here, frankly. I think 4.5 is quite on the money. I know this team has a bad history. It's lost, won one game in 2 seasons. So it's not out of the realms of possibility for this team to not win 5 games. But I think they could be the Titans, which you can see now. They could beat the Jets. They could beat the Raiders and Patriots. And they could then maybe sneak a win or 2 from some opponents if they have injuries. I think, though, that they're going to get 5 wins. I don't think they're going to get more than that, so I'm not going heavy over, but I will say they're going to get just over the 4.5 win total. But I think for the Browns this season, it's going to be really touch and go. Finishing in 3rd place in the AFC North this year, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it just feels like this team has been sleepwalking, asleep at the wheel, really, since 2018, I would say. The Cowboys, rightly, get a lot of stick for not doing much in the postseason. I think the Steelers are kind of almost worse, dare I say. And Steelers fans, I know sometimes we don't really see eye to eye, but just hang on for a minute. Hang on. Just let me cook before you leave some hate in my comments. The last time they didn't go above 500, which is 8-8, back when the NFL regular season was only 16 games. That was 2003. This team has consistently been very good, if we're looking at it for what it is, for the last 20 plus years. But since 2018, they've done nothing in the postseason apart from being cannon fodder in the wild card round. 4 times they've done that. Just made the playoffs for the sake of making the playoffs. No one ever thought they were going to do more than that, apart from maybe that one year in, 2019, where they had a really fraudulent, 12-1 record, and then they just spiraled at the end of the season. Fittingly, their over-under win total for this year is at 8.5. So again, the Vegas bookies are expecting them to get 9 wins and have a positive, quote-unquote, season. But not much more than that. So I'll start this time for my reasons for optimism for the Steelers. And I struggled, not because I don't think this team isn't going to be good. I do. I think this team is a good team. And I want to make that absolutely clear. I think, though, what the Steelers are victims of high expectations, which I think, given the history of the Steelers, is honestly right to have. This is a team that should be, and we want to be, competing in January. And for the most part, for the last few years, they haven't done that. So I did struggle to find what I could really show as being a beacon of this is going to turn your season around. Because if I'm being honest with myself, and I'll talk about this more for the reasons for concern, I just don't really feel it. But if I'm forcing myself to, let's first obviously start with Aaron Rodgers. I really did not want to put him in the positive thing at all, and I'll say why in a few moments. But if you really just look at it black and white, they now do have a quarterback. The Steelers now do have a quarterback who should give them decent play. And we've seen the Steelers have success with even less than subpar quarterback play, really. They are that good as an overall team, and they are very well run. They have a fantastic defense. So if you do give them just kind of okay, or maybe better than that, slightly better than average quarterback play, the Steelers are going to be competitive. And look, we saw Rodgers get got in London. I was there personally. I think he threw 3 interceptions, had 4 turnover-worthy plays in that game. Did also get got against the Broncos as well, I believe. But generally speaking, he actually played a lot better than the narrative around him would suggest. On the field, that is. I want to stress on the field. And he could play better than that this year. Right, I'm being positive here. He could play better than that. He was coming off the Achilles. He's now another year removed from that. Might give him more time to heal. He isn't the youngest of quarterbacks anymore, being 41, I believe. So I think his floor is there, even if we can question the ceiling. Ultimately, what I think the real strength of this team is, as I've hinted at already, is the defense. I think Derek Harmon, the rookie from Oregon this year, I think he's going to eat in that defense. Playing next to Cam Hayward, one of the best players he could possibly learn from. Then next to Alex Highsmith, who I think is really underrated. Next to TJ Watt, those 2 guys off the edge, and are going to give Harmon just one-on-one opportunities which he can win with consistently. Such a great pass rusher. That defensive line, as is always the case in Pittsburgh, is looking as elite as it ever has. They've also added Darius Slay as the CB2 opposite Joey Porter. I think both of those guys might have question marks, but ultimately they are going to be put in favorable positions because the defensive line is going to force quarterbacks to get the ball out quickly, giving the cornerbacks less time to have to be in coverage, which I think will help them. And I do, as a little asterisk, as a little aside, I do want to say that if Will Howard has to play for whatever reason, I think he could honestly do a decent job given the opportunity. And I would really like to actually see that. Do I think we will? No, but I did love the draft pick. I did love Howard. I love the value the Steelers got him in the 5th, I believe. So that's a little sneaky one for you Steelers fans. If the Aaron Rodgers experiment does fail, I think Will Howard could come in and do a job. Now, reasons for concern. Again, I just think that time might have run out for the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers here. I think I think both parties might just have run out of time a little bit. Rodgers in particular, we're looking at first. He was elite. No longer. right? Now I think he is a coach killer. I think the Jets experiment was a disaster. I think he's a locker room cancer. I don't think he's going to gel well with Arthur Smith. They are two strong personalities who know it's a marriage of convenience, realistically, and will also realistically only be for a year. So who's going to blink first in that game of chicken? It won't be Arthur Smith who's going to hope he's going to stay around after Aaron Rodgers has gone, and he's not going to go down with the Aaron Rodgers ship, knowing that Rodgers only has a year left of football in him realistically. I think that could cause a lot of tension. There is, though, I will say that perhaps Rodgers now in his older age will rely more on the pass action, the run game, etc. So we'll see. But I'm not convinced of that relationship just yet. And look, Mike Tomlin is undoubtedly a great head coach. Like, I think now it's almost in vogue to hate on Tomlin. But I think he's kind of the victim of his own success, almost. He seems to do a lot with very tricky characters, right? Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and those are just in the last, 5-6 years. And he's consistently getting the most out of his team, but I think offensively they're always kind of lacking. I think George Pickens is quite overrated. I think he is really a high variance role player, and I know Steelers fans might not like that, but I think that's what he is realistically. So, and I just think that with Tomlin and how he keeps getting the most out of maybe not the best team on paper, kind of making the team better than the sum of its parts, I just don't know how much longer we can keep going on like this, right? How much longer can we just keep making the playoffs but not making any waves in the playoffs? I kind of feel that this, with Rodgers now on a 1-year rental, this is it. If we don't get the success that we're looking for, really that's a playoff win, then I think it's probably going to be time for the Steelers to blow it up and kind of have a hard reset, despite being a good team. But that's what I'm saying, is that the Steelers are not a good team. They are, but they're just not as good as they should be, really, is what I think it boils down to. And I think they've really kind of made a rod for their own back with their expectations, which I think is right. You want your team to win a Super Bowl. At the moment, I don't think the Steelers, despite being a good team, are really in any serious contention for doing so. So their over-under total is 8.5. Vegas know what they're doing. As I've said, they are 10th in strength of schedule. They have to play the AFC North. They're all in the same division, so all of these teams have to play the AFC North. Then they've got to play the Lions, Bills, and Bears. We're going to know, I think, with the Steelers, what kind of Steelers team we're going to have, what version of the Steelers we're going to have by week 4, because they start the season playing the Jets, the Seahawks, the Patriots, and the Vikings. They honestly, feasibly could be 4-0 after those games. The Jets with Justin Fields, Seahawks with Sam Darnold might be a little iffy, who knows. Patriots, again, who knows about them, and Vikings with JJ McCarthy. Those, at the moment, are winnable games, I would say. Winnable, not locked, but winnable. If the Steelers go 4-0, we're going to have a repeat of 2019 or whatever it was. I think the hype is going to be unbelievable for the Steelers, and I think that might come crashing down because their schedule gets a hell of a lot harder after that. I do think they're going to get 9 wins. I think this team is inevitably going to get 9 wins, right? Hell will freeze over before Mike Tomlin lets this team have a losing record. And unfortunately, and almost ironically, that's going to be his undoing. And really, the Steelers and their fans will have a winning record, but they won't see it as a positive season. My second place team is the Cincinnati Bengals, and this was really close with the Baltimore Ravens, but with the Bengals, there's just too much uncertainty surrounding the Bengals for my liking. I can't really, in good conscience, put them ahead of the Ravens of all teams. There is lots of reasons for positivity about this team, but also lots of reasons for concern too. I think they have a massive variance, as is kind of traditionally the Bengals' way of doing things these days, it feels like. 9.5 is the over-under for this team. And again, I think that's a pretty fair over-under win total. But let's start with the reasons for optimism. Obviously, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Those are my 3 reasons for optimism. Those 3 can put up 40 points by themselves in any given week. Not necessarily every week, right? 40 points in the NFL is very, very difficult to do. But at any point in the game, you have to watch out for Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins just taking it over, frankly. They were averaging 28.7 points per game last year, one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL. And it was even higher than that down the stretch. And they've had a shootout with the Steelers, like 48 points or whatever. And Joe Burrow, I would say, is arguably the best pure passer in the NFL, right? He is an elite quarterback only with his arm and his brain. And I think Jamar Chase is an elite wide receiver. Saw that last year. I think Higgins is an elite wide receiver too. I think that's never really been in doubt. And Burrow is able to win and get the ball out to those guys behind a bad offensive line because he's so cerebral. He's got such great game awareness, such high game IQ, great accuracy. Jamar Chase, 1,700 yards last year, 700 yards after the catch. He can house it from anywhere. T. Higgins, such a reliable big-bodied threat. Great compliment to Jamar Chase. If he's being doubled or is having a game where he's struggling to get the production, just go to T. Higgins. He'll be one-on-one down the sideline. Throw it up to him. Big-body threat, he'll come down with it. He takes advantage from the attention that Jamar Chase gets. And now, financials will be spoken about in a moment. Don't you worry. I wouldn't be talking about the Bengals if I couldn't. I'm not sure if having $100 million tied up in 3 players at only 2 positions, both on the offensive side of the ball, is great team building. But I don't think fans are going to be wanting to keep the receipt for too long because those 3 guys are elite at what they do. And it's one of the best trios offensively in the NFL. And so that has to be a massive reason for positivity for this team. However, the reasons for concern, everything else, right? The offensive line allowed the 5th most pressures in the league last year. They only added a 3rd-round rookie in Dylan Fairchild and Patrick Lucas at both guard spots. We need to see more from Amarius Mims, their rookie they drafted with a 1st-round pick last year. The defense allowed 25 points per game on average last year. That is one of the worst in the league. The only good player on the defense last year was Trey Hendrickson, the sack leader, but he's now refusing, as of recording this on the 17th of June, to play without a new contract, and understandably and rightly so, frankly. And Shamar Stewart, the rookie they drafted with the 17th overall pick in this year's draft from Texas A&M, he's not signed his rookie contract because it says in the wording of that contract, if he is suspended, even on field, say for leading with the helmet, which happens fairly often, right? That's well within the realms of possibilities. And we've seen that call be made perhaps when it shouldn't be. That then means his guaranteed money could be voided. It makes no sense. It's just a lose-lose for both parties. The Bengals now have not been developing their 1st-round rookie, who greatly needs to develop. One of Shamar Stewart's biggest knocks coming out of Texas A&M for me and everyone else was that, amazing athlete, amazing physical traits, can't put it together. He doesn't really know how to rush the passer. If he can work it out, then great, you might have an athletic freak. But he needed to be at rookie minicamp to get those reps, to work with the defense, understand the defensive system, get coached. And he's not. And the Bengals are ultimately going to lose that development from their rookie. And as is Shamar Stewart himself. He's missing out on development as well. So it just makes no sense to me why the Bengals do business this way. And again, I think this is symptoms of a wider problem. The Bengals have been, and seemingly always will be for as long as they are in the current ownership, are a cheap organization. They do not have the cash. They're not a cash-rich team that can put a lot of money aside to pay players early and give them the guarantees that modern NFL players are looking for. And they're always trying to find ways to save the pennies because that's how the Bengals are owned and run. And I think that this team really, if we're really looking at it for what it is, and we're really holding a microscope to this thing, the Bengals are trying to win a Super Bowl with one hand tied behind their back. The Bengals are good on field, offensively and hopefully defensively, with hopefully Trey Hendrickson and hopefully Shamar Stewart both playing and hopefully playing well. But they could be even better if they were helped properly financially off the field. So what do I think? Their over-under total is 9.5. I feel pretty confident about the over here, if I'm being honest. I do think this team is going to comfortably clear 10 wins. The Bengals, if we're looking at last season, the Bengals lost to the Ravens by a point. And then when they played them again, lost to them in overtime. They lost in a shootout with the Steelers, which they should have won. And they lost to the Chiefs by a point and then a freak loss to the Patriots. That is 5 wins, which if it were to happen again, I honestly think would or could go the other way. I think the Bengals are looking at a 3-win swing here, straight off the bat. And they still finished the season 9-8. So I think 9.5 wins is doing the Bengals a disservice, honestly. I don't think Lightning is going to strike twice with those odd, not fluky, but odd wins when you stack up all 5 of them. They are a very high variance team. I am worried about them, but they are a team that if they make the playoffs, I think they could go the whole distance pretty easily. I think that's the mentality the Bengals kind of have at this point. They are very boom and very bust. And I do like their shot at a Super Bowl. So I like the outlook for this team a lot this season. But a team I like the outlook for even more is my first place team, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. And as I said, it was very close with the Bengals, but the Ravens are just such a clean franchise. There is no noise surrounding this team. They are totally unified, both coaching and player personnel wise, and their approach to the game and the scheme. They are all on the same page, singing from the same hymn sheet. They are such a well-run franchise. And the results are there to see on the field. I think that's such a great juxtaposition with the Bengals, right? The Ravens, just from the top down, are so clean. And it results in wins on the field. The owners aren't on the field. They don't suit up on Sundays, but they impact the very running of the team, which is so important. The Ravens over-under this year is 11.5 wins, which is very high, but fitting. The reasons for optimism with this team. I got one word for you, buddy. Lamar Jackson. I was a big fan of Josh Allen getting his MVP. I'm a big Josh Allen guy. But Lamar Jackson played just as well and had just a strong case to earn that award. And he's already won it twice, and rightly so on both those occasions. He can do what no other quarterback can do in the league, which is that dual threat ability. I think he is arguably the most dynamic dual threat quarterback ever. And I mean that. More so than Cam Newton, more so than Michael Vick. The longevity that Lamar Jackson has had at a position and a play style which really does not lead itself to longevity is a testament to how good he is at that thing. He's able to tear up defenses on the ground while not really taking hits. He's able to stand in the pocket and deliver bombs down the field while also not really taking hits. NFL defenders cannot touch this guy. They simply cannot. He is playing a different game. He looks like someone that is playing at a remote D1 college who's going to go to the league. He looks that much better than everyone else. And this is the NFL we're talking about. Defenders are literally terrified of him. You can see it in the way they try to defend against him. Pass rushers have to maintain their lanes because if there's an escape lane for Lamar Jackson, he's gone. So pass rushers aren't even really trying to sack Lamar Jackson. They're kind of just trying to keep him in the pocket, which used to work back in his first year and maybe the year after that, but he is now a great passer in his own right. He can win with his arm, win with his legs. Absolutely elite. He's a joy to watch. Derrick Henry as well, I have to mention him. Derrick Henry and the wider offensive system run by Todd Monken is also a massive reason for hope about this team, really. Henry fits the Ravens' run game perfectly. It is chef's kiss, absolutely exquisite. They want to be bigger, stronger, tougher, run you over. That has, and seemingly always has been, the Ravens' kind of mantra as a team, and definitely in how they run the ball. And Derrick Henry, I mean, look at the size of the geezer, right? Fits that brilliantly. But he had almost 2,200 yards last year. If it wasn't for Saquon Barkley's heroic season, we'd be talking about Derrick Henry in the same way. He had 1,300 yards after contact. The Ravens like going into 22 personnel. By 22 personnel, what I mean is 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, 2-2, and they have Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews on the field, along with Derrick Henry and Patrick Ricard, the fullback. How do modern NFL defenses, which have generally gotten lighter and faster to protect against the pass, who do you put on the field to combat against that? You've got Patrick Ricard lead blocking for Derrick Henry against cornerbacks that weigh half their weight. And that's what the Ravens do, is they just know what they are to a T. They know how to execute what they need to do. And they have the players that perfectly give them the opportunities to do that. They're just such a great team. Reasons for concern, though, and it's hard to find one for the Ravens, I'm not going to lie, barring injuries, which you could say for every team. But if we're looking at kind of what makes this team tick and what the real limitations of it are, I think really, despite it being a bit nitpicky, I think it's the lack of postseason success. And that's not in the way the Steelers have had it. But I think in a way, I feel that the Bengals and the Ravens are kind of like perfectly opposed as teams, right? Perfectly balanced. That I think if both the Ravens and the Bengals were to make the playoffs, I'd feel better right now about the Bengals going further than the Ravens. Not because they're a better team, I think because they're a worse one, but I think they don't have the jitters in the postseason, which the Ravens honestly seem to have, right? We saw it last year. Lamar Jackson throw a not great pass, but a very egregious drop from the tight end, Mark Andrews. That's kind of, I know it's just one play, and that can just very easily go the other way. You throw that pass 100 times, 99 times it's getting completed. I'm not holding that against the Ravens. But I do want to see this team play in a Super Bowl. that's the ultimate goal, right? It's not just to always win 11, 12 games a season. It's to win the Super Bowl. You'd rather win 9 wins, be a wild card team and win the Super Bowl than go undefeated and lose in the playoffs. So if we're looking at what this team is aiming for, which is that, the Lombardi, then it needs to do better in the postseason. It's such a dominant regular season team that never really translates as strongly to January, and you want to really be the reverse if we're being honest with ourselves. So it's nitpicky, but that is how good they are as a team. So their over-under is 11.5. That is a really high win total. Do I think they're going to go over it? Do I think they're going to go under it? They're going to be right around there. Vegas, unsurprisingly, knows what it's doing here, guys. Give me the over, though. I can see 12 wins for this team. I know they've got a hard schedule. I know they're playing really strong teams. But they are a strong team. I think they are a top 3 team for me in the entire NFL because of how well-rounded, how well coached, how well run they are. So I'm going to take the over. So you can see now on the screen my final AFC North power rankings. From first to last, we have the Ravens, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Browns. I've gone fairly chalky with these. I know I am jarringly in line with the Vegas odds here and what they think. That's not always going to be the case, especially for some of the other divisions, but I do think that because of how strong the AFC North is, it's very difficult for a team to suddenly go on a run and really surprise people without there being injuries or just crazy surges in variance. So I think despite it being pretty chalky, I do like how that looks. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Have I underrated your team? Have I overrated another team? What have I got right? What have I got wrong? Again, make sure you subscribe for more off-season NFL content. I'm having 7 more of these videos with all of the other divisions. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment. But I've been your host, Tom Corbs. This has been Corbs NFL. I'll see you on the next video.